So, in my last video about the 5 questions you must ask to price a product, I mentioned that sometimes you can add too many features to your product, resulting in a lower likelihood of purchase, a lower achievable price, or even killing the product entirely, even if all those features are awesome. And it might sound counterintuitive, but it's the truth. So if you'd like to know more about this surprising phenomenon, keep watching. You see, products can have 3 types of features when it comes to value generation. Yes features are those behind the reason why you buy the product. They are your must-haves, the ones that make you open up your wallet and gladly throw your money at the seller. No-way features are those that, when present, not only don't make you want to spend more, but actually make you not want to buy the product at all. And then there are those meh features. They're nice to have, but don't really convince you to pay more for the product. You might pay a little, but they're not the ones making you want to hand your money to the seller. And they are a lot more dangerous to have than most people realize. So let's take a closer look at each of these types and the impact that they may have on your product. Let's start by looking at the yes features. So these are the ones that sell your product. And they don't need much explanation. You know what they are. But make sure that you understand which of your product's features are the yes ones for each of your target customer segments. You must pay attention to these features and put them at the center of your value communication strategy. Remember that these are the ones that convince people to reach for their wallets and buy your product. And a note of caution here. Segmentation is crucial when it comes to understanding the value of each feature. What is a yes feature to one customer segment may be a for another one, or even a no way for some. Always remember that some people don't like chocolate. Weird if you ask me, but it happens. So if you have different customer segments, each with a different set of yes features, packing them all together in a product may not be a good idea. You risk ending up with a product that doesn't please any of those segments. And as we'll see below, having features that the customer isn't excited about may be worse than not having them at all. But let's move on to the no-way features. In this case, the problem is that we're developing the wrong features, or at least we are targeting the wrong segment. So, no-way features can be dangerous, but they don't necessarily have to be, because just as not everybody likes chocolate, not everyone hates Brussels sprouts. So, if some features are likely to be no-way ones for some of your customers and they cannot be avoided, segmentation becomes key. You need to find the right customer segment for your product, target those for whom these no-way features are at least acceptable, and forget about all the other ones. But you must make sure that at least one large enough segment finds the no-way features at least acceptable. Otherwise, you may end up with a product that nobody will buy, or that some will, but not in enough numbers to make it profitable. Now, unfortunately, no-way features become a huge problem when you insist on trying to sell a product to the wrong segment. And this happens a lot more often than it should. One episode I'll never forget happened a few years ago while I was out shopping for a winter coat. So I went into a store and saw this beautiful winter coat. The only problem was that it had this furry collar that kind of looked like fox fur. So when the seller approached me and asked if I had any doubts, I asked what the collar was made of, and she said, really proudly, "Oh, it's real fox fur." And I said, "Okay, I'm sorry, but I don't buy real fur. Do you have something similar without fur on it?" To which she replied, "But it has a great price. This coat is a great deal." Yes, it does have a great price, but I really don't want fur." "Ah, don't worry, the collar is detachable." "Yeah, but I really don't want to pay for a dead fox." And you might think that after this, she showed me a different coat. But no, she kept on insisting on selling me the same coat that I had already said I was never going to buy. And she kept on insisting until I had had enough and left the store. So, what went wrong here? To begin, the sales assistant was clearly expecting the fox fur color to be a yes feature for me. So much so that when I stated that it was a no way, she refused to accept it. In other words, she misjudged the market segment I belong to, and when I clarified it, she ignored the information. Then, she tried to convince me that my no way feature was actually a meh one. The issue is, people often feel very strongly about the no way features. That's why they are no way features, otherwise it would be meh. In those cases, trying to change perceptions about them is a lost battle. After that, she tried to convince me that the price was too good for me to fixate on a single feature I didn't like. The issue here was, price wasn't the problem. So it could have never have been the issue. I mean, I had agreed that the price was great. To end, she failed to show me a product that matched the characteristics I was asking for. And only she knows why. That's what made the whole situation so surreal. She had plenty of coats in the store and put all her energy on selling one that I had already said had a feature that was unacceptable to me. Finally, to add insult to injury, the feature that was unacceptable to me is highly valued among other customer segments. I mean, I know a lot of people to whom she would have easily sold that coat, but she chose to spend her time on someone who was never going to buy it. And that had been clear about it. Now, clearly, this situation was a bit surreal. That's what makes it unforgettable. But in milder forms, it happens to me quite frequently. And in this case, we're just talking about one sale. But if this lady was developing a product with this same attitude, I mean, we can all guess where that ship would go, can't we? Anyway, let's move on to the meh features, the silent product killers. And this is where things get trickier. You see, having too many features that nobody's excited about can kill a product. And if you're thinking, oh, but these aren't no-way features, they shouldn't be that dangerous, right? Well, they are. You see, the more features a product has, the harder it becomes to explain what it's good for in a sentence. And if you're tempted to promote features beyond the yes ones, the value proposition may become weak and too confusing. So, if you're bundling a large number of features, hoping that at least some will be yes ones to a part of your potential customers, you need to be very careful when promoting it to them. You see, you must adapt the product's value messaging to match what the customer segment you are targeting at each point in time values most. Otherwise, you'll be trying to sell a product based on meh features that people don't really care about and won't pay for. In a different situation, if the meh features fall into that category, not because they're not something your customers value, but because when it comes to these features, your product has a less than outstanding quality versus competitor products, if you communicate them, you risk having these less than great features dilute the value of your awesome ones. Then, we must remember that developing and producing features has a cost. Even digital products that don't really have a cost of producing each additional unit sold require time to develop additional features, time that could be invested elsewhere. So if you are using resources to build features that your customers aren't willing to pay for, and that aren't essential to be able to make the sale, you are damaging your bottom line. In extreme cases, you can even end up with a product that, just to avoid losing money, would have to be priced at a level at which nobody would buy it because of its price. And this is the saddest one, by adding more features to your product, you can be rewarded by your customers with a lower willingness to pay. And I'm not referring to mixing great features with weaker ones so that the weaker features dilute the perceived value of the great ones. Here, I'm really referring to the number of features, not their quality. Having too many features, even if all of them are great, can decrease the customer's willingness to pay. And why does this happen? Well, The issue here is that we are wired to believe that a higher value comes at a higher cost. After all, you can't get something for nothing, right? So, when you see a product with a lot of features you don't need, the immediate reaction is, I'm paying for stuff I don't want. If the product only had the features I need, it would be cheaper. And because we suck at assessing a product's value in absolute terms, we really need a reference to compare it to. Even if the product is a bargain, we may not be able to see it. We fixate on the features we think we are paying for and don't want. So your own product's price becomes an anchor, in this case, to make us think that we could get a cheaper alternative. If only we could buy just what we needed. And down goes the willingness to pay. Whoops. So this means that the belief that the more features, the higher the value, and thus the higher the achievable price, is wrong. It seems like a reasonable thing to assume, but in real life it does not necessarily work. The thing is, if you add too many features to a product, hoping that everyone will want it because of at least some of those features, you may end up developing a product that's just way too special. Not to mention expensive to produce. So, the next time you are thinking about what to include in your product, keep this in mind. Make sure you don't develop something that's bound to be unprofitable, have a confusing value proposition, or create a perception that it could be cheaper. And if you'd like to know what 3 things must be at the core of your product development and product management strategies to make sure that we create profitable products, make sure you don't miss next week's video. Anyway, do you think you may have made a mistake of building too many features into one of your products? And had you ever thought about how over-delivering on a product could decrease customers' willingness to pay? Let me know about it in the comments. See you in the next video. Bye!